Sonya, welcome to the Rain or Shine podcast. Last time you were here, we just figured out was over 8 years ago, which is absolutely crazy. I'm actually going to pull that episode and link it in our show notes because I think it'll be fun for you and I, and for some of our OG listeners who have been here since day one to go back into the archives and listen. But today you're back. You have a whole new story to share, 8 years to catch up on. So, first off, welcome to the show and thank you for being here.
Wow, I can't believe it's been 8 years. Thank you so much for having me again.
I know it's a long overdue catch up. And for the listener, we do get to catch up all of the time. So this is not the first time you and I are speaking in 8 years, but first time that you're back on the mic. So let's kick off with some rapid fire questions because I always love picking another entrepreneur's brain and just hearing some good tips and tricks to get us into the show. So, first off, I know that you're a busy woman. You work, you have kids, you have a husband who also has a business. When you get to the end of a long week and you need to unwind, what do you do to just chill out and let your brain have a rest?
Yeah, well, to me, the best luxury in the world is being able to cook.
Yes.
I love cooking. So, a really good recipe, maybe a podcast on my headphones, and lots of vegetables and food and cooking. Like to me, that means I'm relaxed.
Yeah. Oh, there is nothing better. I love that too. And I feel like the winter for me always gets me re-inspired in the kitchen. And I just spend more time being creative, baking, cooking. And it's such a simple pleasure, but it just kind of like gets you busy with your hands and you feel so proud of the end product. You feel good feeding others healthy foods. So, yeah, I think that's something that maybe like the high level entrepreneur would say, outsource everything that you don't need to be doing. And I'm always
Oh,
like, no, I would not outsource cooking
yeah.
because that is such a pleasure in my life.
Yeah. I
Okay.
learned so much from cooking.
Oh my gosh, true. Like there's so many life lessons you can extract as well.
Yeah.
I know you are a fan of many business books, but I'd love to know, besides the E-Myth, which I'm going to cover off later in this episode,
Okay.
what is one business or personal growth or even just fiction novel that has impacted your
Mm.
life or just changed the way that you think?
Yeah. So I'm going old school, but it's old school, but it's a classic. Have you read The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People?
I sure have.
Okay. It's classic. I know it's maybe cliche, but I mean, you asked what has impacted my life, and I feel like I taught those principles to my kids.
Wow.
And I use them in my business and I use them with everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes I love when our guests remind us of like just the old school classical books because those are books that we shouldn't just read once, when we're 18 and then forget about it. Like we should almost reread that book every decade, right?
Yeah.
What is one thing you do every single day that is non-negotiable to you?
Walk. Yeah. Walk. I
So
mean,
simple.
it's a luxury. I mean, I know it. I remember raised kids for a long time, but now I'm an empty nester.
Yep.
So I have the luxury of doing that, but walk.
What is it about walking? Is it the like physical movement? Do you get ideas and do a lot of thinking and processing on a walk? Why is that a staple?
Yeah, well, actually, it's because it's almost multitasking. You're getting your vitamin D, you're
Yep.
getting into nature, you can get peace and quiet. Sometimes I put a podcast on, but
Yep.
actually, more recently, I listen to Voxers from my friends
Yep.
and I send Voxers. And so I'm also connecting with people.
Yep.
It's awesome.
I know. It really can check so many boxes.
Mhm.
And final rapid fire question. What's the most unexpected or unusual job you've ever worked, if there has been one?
I was paid to be an outreach worker for 2 years. This was in South Africa, and we ran after school clubs, music programs, a feeding scheme for a whole neighborhood in South Africa. And I did it with my husband and my kids at the same time for 2 years.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like an incredible chapter of your life that we're gonna
Yeah.
have to dig into on a whole other episode. So cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dig in. So, like I mentioned at the beginning, you and I go way back. I first started this podcast in 2018, and I believe you were one of my first 20 guests. I partnered with Prince Edward County and the Business Development Center there and did a little podcast tour in the area where you had opened a business. So, can we rewind to that chapter? You had a cafe, it was called the Vic Café. So, why did you open that business? Tell the listeners a little bit about it if they haven't listened to our first episode. And yeah, what inspired you to ultimately open the cafe and run that for the many years that you did?
Yeah. So, about 11 years ago now, I was 35 years old. I had three kids. My oldest was just starting high school. And I knew at this point I needed to work economically. But I really wasn't willing to have a boss or even like work in that corporate structure, mostly because I was still very much a parent and very involved. Um, so I I thought owning my own business would be so much simpler. Oh,
We're both
but
laughing.
I knew I needed to do it. Yeah, so that's why I opened it. But I remember because I had kids at that stage in my life and a family, I remember putting in even in my employee handbook, like the very beginning of the employee handbook, like note to employees, I'm a mom and I'm not always going to be there. And if that doesn't work for you, like you are welcome to leave.
Hmm.
Um, and I was able to do that.
Hmm. That is, first of all, I love how clear you were right from the get-go, because I think most of us figure that out the hard way, trying to be responsive 24/7 and then having to implement boundaries. But it sounds like you knew right from the get-go that I cannot have a business that takes over my entire life because family is my priority. And I want to start this business and pour everything into it, but have people that can run it. So when you set up the cafe, was the goal for you to make sure that you had systems and structures so that you weren't the barista? Like you weren't the one constantly behind the counter, counting change, making the coffees, the face of the business. Talk to me a little bit about that because you are someone who thinks more in processes and SOPs than the average brick and mortar owner, I think. So yeah, just run me through a little
Yeah.
bit of your thought
Yeah, I
process.
think also because I was thinking long term, and even at 35, I was like, what do I want to do when I'm 50? What do I want to do when I'm 60? And
Mhm.
it wasn't like, stand behind a counter and talk to customers. Honestly, that's just not me. And anytime I had to do that, it wasn't my best self.
Right.
I knew that about me. A lot of people are good at that, and that's awesome. But I always knew that I have more of a leadership skills and talents. So, yeah, actually, before we opened our doors, we hired a manager. Even though, like traditionally, that would be the owner's job, I knew I needed to outsource some of those things and just be the owner and make owner decisions.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so I did that right away. It is funny when you're opening a brick and mortar, you do all of a sudden become an employer. A lot of us work up to that without a
Yep.
brick and mortar, but you automatically become an employer. You become a boss and an HR person. And I knew I could not do it all. I knew I wasn't good at all of those things. I didn't really have particular experience in the service industry. So,
Mhm.
kind of like having kids, as you watch a kid grow up and you see that they have a particular strength,
Yep.
you sort of like lean into that a little bit, or you help them lean into those strengths. That's the way I thought of my employees is like looking for people who have particular strengths and leaning into those and leaning on those really.
Hmm. When you opened the Vic Cafe, was this like your forever plan, or did you see this as like, I want to do this for 5 years or 10 years and then sell it? What was the initial vision?
Yeah, I wasn't interested in doing like a flash in the pan business. And of course, before I opened, I remember reading the stats, whatever it is, X amount of businesses fail in the first 5 years. I was like, okay, how do I learn from that?
Hmm.
Because I don't want to do that. I mean, I'm not, I wasn't interested in failing. Of course, I failed a million times over.
Yeah.
But I wasn't interested in just building something poorly. I wanted to do it right. Uh, so my vision was that this was going to be some sort of legacy for my kids one way or another. I didn't know how, but if I was going to take the time away from my kids and my family, I wanted it to be worth it in one way or another.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, what were some of the highs and the lows associated with running a brick and mortar, with that entire journey, start to finish, of the Vic Cafe? Because I just want to share kind of like the real talk here, because I think even a lot of people I talk to, one of my best friends in the town that I live in, it's kind of a pipe dream to open a local
Oh, yeah.
cafe, lunch spot, coffee shop. There's like such a charm to it, in my opinion. So I just love to hear some of the amazing things and what you absolutely loved about running the business and hosting that community space, and then maybe what some of the realistic challenges were that you faced.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, sure, it is very much like a Hallmark movie. You get to create your dream, and it is a creative venture, right? You
Yeah.
can create a menu, you can create staff systems, you can come up with creative ways on how your customers go through the points of service. Every moment in a business like a cafe is a point where you get to be creative. If it's not a franchise, it's yours. Do with what you want, and I love that. Like that was awesome. It became a huge creative outlet for me. The hard realities is that restaurants are open 7 days a week, and even if I wasn't on location, it was in my head. And as my kids got older, I started to realize that restaurants do not go with the traditional schedule, like vacation holiday schedules, like adults do as my kids got to be adults. So like any holidays they had off were usually the busiest days that we would work. And that was very, very difficult. I never had a Victoria Day, like a May 2-4 day. Like, I don't know what you do on those days. I don't know what to do on Easter, even now. I
Yeah,
just
you
tell my kids,
canceled
like,
all holidays at
we have
home.
no holidays. I don't know what people do, but still haven't figured it out.
Hmm.
So you actually end up isolating yourself from the people who have those regular
Yeah.
schedules, and that's very hard.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's some of these things that I think it's important to just really sit with. Like, am I okay with this? Of like the trade-offs of this type of business, but requiring this type of output from me.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening with the Vic? Can you just kind of fast forward us to the
Yeah.
quote unquote end? Did you sell it? Did you pass it off? Did you close it down? And then what was that feeling of walking away?
Yeah. So the feeling came first, actually.
Okay.
So the feeling came first, and it was probably a couple years before we actually ultimately gave up the Vic, and I'll tell you what happened. But
Yeah.
it was about a year of me almost like grieving the loss that this business is not going to work for the future that I wanted to have.
Yeah.
And it took about a year for me to convince myself that I'm not going to be the one to move it forward. Of course, COVID happened in there too, but so the feeling happened first. There was a grief process, and then we officially put it on the market to sell,
Hmm.
and successfully found a buyer and sold it. And now the Vic is actually still alive and running in a different way. It's not my way. Honestly, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like it's fine. I'm really glad that I had an asset that was sellable and there was a system there that some appealed to somebody else and they took it on and it's theirs.
Hmm. And how many years was that? So you opened the Vic what year and then
Yeah,
sold it what year?
2015 to 2023.
2015. Okay. It's so funny because I feel like there's this whole concept of like 7-year cycles, and you
Oh
almost
yeah.
just had that feeling around the seven
Yeah.
year mark, right? So it's,
Yeah.
yeah, don't know what
Yeah.
that is. So crazy. Well, okay. So then what happened? You sell the business, you pass it off to somebody else. Did you take time off? Were you immediately into the next project? Did you have any remorse? Did you have any worry of like, will I ever find something else to pour into?
Well, in 2020, I had built the business to a point where I was not in the day-to-day at all.
Yeah.
And COVID happened, and I'm sure you all know what happened there. In the restaurant industry, we went to takeout, which really meant for most restaurants that I've talked to, it's a two-staff operation. You had a cook in the back and somebody in the front of house, which neither was me. So I had nothing to do. And so I also didn't really know what the future of the restaurant was. So I was like, well, why didn't I
Okay.
just go back to school? This is a good time.
Yep.
My kids were less of a demand, so I went to law school.
So you went to law
So
school. Slight pivot.
yeah, a slight pivot. And like a law degree, as the way I understood it was that it's a very versatile degree. You don't have to go be a lawyer with a law degree. So I figured that it would just be great for my future to think like a lawyer in whatever I did.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, did you have any hesitations with going back to school at, I don't know what age you would have been at that
Yeah.
point,
I had
but
just turned 40.
just
Yeah.
turned 40. Okay. And
Yeah.
so, I feel like I've been talking about this a lot lately with like the, is it too late? Which is a made up construct in our head. But people in my decade, I'm in my late 30s,
Mhm.
are talking to me going, I hate my job, but I feel like it's too late. I want to
Oh my
start a
God.
business, but I feel like it's too late. And I actually just had Dr. Shannon Holmes on the podcast, who literally got her master's at 50 years old. And we
Yeah.
had this conversation, and she had some interesting perspectives. Did you ever face any of that inner dialogue of it's too late to make a change? Going back to school is going to involve, I don't know, 4 more years before I can even turn this into a business or go work for a firm? Or did you just know that like it's all good? Like trust in whatever's going to work out.
Yeah, for me, it's there's a few facets to my answer. One is kind of funny, is like I did obviously get married young and had kids young, and I remember making that choice when I was 20, let's say, in my 20s. Um, and I remember actually saying, I'm going to do the kid thing first, the career thing second. And I always knew that. So when I told my husband I'm going to go back to law school, he's like, yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, it wasn't too late. It was always the plan.
Mm. And like
Um,
that literally goes back to what you said earlier of like know your priorities from day one. It's like you made that
yeah,
very clear in
yeah,
starting the Vic Cafe. I'm a mom first. And even in making a decision to start your family, I'm a mom first, and I will go chase my career at some point.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So it was part of the plan. Now, the other facet is like was it terrifying to go back to school at 40? Yes, like I had the worst case of imposter syndrome for 4 years straight.
Yeah.
Always apologizing for who I was, always
Mhm.
feeling like I didn't fit in, hiding, in the back corner. It was me and a bunch of 24-year-olds for 4 years.
Mhm.
And in some ways, I would tell myself, like, this is a power move. I'm actually much more like wiser or mature than them. But law school isn't built for wise and mature people.
Interesting. Hmm.
So, I mean, there's lots more I can say. So please, anybody can reach out to me. I will gladly talk to them what it's like to go back to school, but absolutely do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely do it. 4 years flew by, and like nobody can ever take that away from you,
Hmm.
that degree. Yeah.
So cool. And I know you've mentioned before that you are somebody who's always thinking like 3 to 5 years ahead. And by thinking ahead, that keeps you grounded. Can you talk to me about like why having that 3 to 5 year vision matters to you in different stages of life? How does that actually keep you anchored in the mundane of the day to day and maybe feeling imposter syndrome, being like, why am I around 24-year-olds? Like, tell us about that vision that you hold true.
Yeah, actually, for me, here, hold on. I'm just gonna pause because Rick's just coming in.
Yep.
So, what I've figured out about this idea of visioning is that it really isn't about that vision that you have. It really isn't. Like, it's not it's not that that thing is going to happen exactly the way you planned it. But for me, it's how I make decisions. And because I don't know if anybody else struggles with this, but like decision making is really hard. I want to say yes to everything. But when I put a decision up to my vision and I ask, will this thing drive me closer to my vision? The answer will tell me if I should say yes or no to it. And so it helps me create a lot of clarity in my day-to-day practice. Yeah.
Well, what do you actually do from a practical standpoint to cast the vision in the first place? Because I think a lot of our listeners, they're kind of stuck in the wake up, do what I did yesterday, check
Mm,
some boxes, not dream about the future because there's enough going on just right in front of me, fires to put out, kids to
yeah.
take care of, groceries to pick up. There is no vision. So, like, what do you actually
Yeah.
do to sit down and
Oh,
say, let me think about my future for a minute. What
yeah.
do I want? What practically, how can I start doing that?
I mean, I hope this doesn't sound like really crazy, but what I do as of late is I think about my 90-year-old self. My 90-year-old self and I have a very interesting relationship because I think about her a lot.
Hmm.
And I tend to put filter everything through her. Um, so and maybe even older than 90, which I think is actually probably better. My 999-year-old self. What would she care about? Um, and it just when I think about that and I think about how I want to be at that age, I want to be healthy, I want to be balanced, I want to be creative, I want to have a active social life, and I want to have a really close family life. Um, and I do want to still like support my family. Um, that makes decision making really easy. And it
Hmm.
really has not a lot to do with my business. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting to hear you say because a lot of our listeners are kind of at the height of their career, right? They're at the
Mm,
peak of pouring into whether it's a more job job, they
yeah,
work corporate, or their business. It kind of is like all consuming. And I find that the bucket that is like most paid attention to these days in your 30s, and in your young 40s is like the work bucket, like devote a lot to work. And then maybe friendships kind of fall to the wayside, relationships fall to the wayside, maybe travel dreams get put on
right.
hold, volunteering gets put on hold because we're busy, right? And so I think what you're saying here is when you think about your 90-year-old self, you're actually planting a lot of the seeds for who she or he is
Yeah.
today. And so, can you tend to some of those other buckets? Or do you want your 90-year-old self to sit there and be able to rhyme off only career achievements? And if so, that's great too, right? Because some people
Yeah.
are very professionally motivated, but it's like, what is that balance? And do
Yeah.
you want to be left without, say, strong relationships at 90 because you didn't tend to them in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s?
Exactly. And I think like that um when you think about your 90-year-old self, um I think what it really comes down to is you're thinking about what's valuable to you. And we do forget it. You're right. We forget it in all the day-to-days. And more so like when we open our phones and we see, buy this thing, buy this thing. There's so many opportunities to forget what is actually most valuable to us. And so I really do think it is a values-based analysis. and then filtering those values through today.
Hmm. Do you have any resources available just for someone who maybe wants to dig into vision or like read or work with you on this? Do you offer anything?
Yeah, well, I actually do what I call a strategy session with people where they come to me with some sort of vision, and we talk that through, we analyze it, and then I give them a roadmap to how to get there. Yeah,
Amazing. Yeah, we will link details for that in the show notes because I know you're so gifted at doing
thank you.
so. Okay, I want to fast forward a little bit to kind of where you were at last year. So, you said in one of your Substack posts, which we will link in the show notes, that you had a moment in 2025 where you panicked. You didn't know if you wanted to do it. You quit for about a week. I actually don't know the full story here. I'm wondering, can you take us back to what was happening? I believe it was last year at about this time where you just had a moment of, I don't know what's going on, what I'm doing with my life. I feel like that's very relatable for our listeners, so bring us back to that
Yeah.
time.
Well, I mean, this is probably circles back to the visioning conversation because I think that's what I was having. It was as like, does any of this matter? You know, like why bother having a
Yep.
job or whatever? And I mean, like it's probably taking that too far. So, but I also did like a full analysis of what it means to be a licensed lawyer. And it is expensive. Like there's a lot of regulations and costs that come into just the practice of law. Um, and and then I didn't know if anybody really wanted me to be a lawyer. And I
Sure.
also didn't know if I could be a lawyer. You know, that there's that image of that corporate lawyer that is like unapproachable and harsh and maybe like very hard to talk to. And I was like, why would I want to do that? I don't want to
Yeah.
be that person. Um, so for about a week, I just started telling people that I was like, I tried to say something like, I help people with their business strategy. Like maybe I would be a business strategist.
Yep.
But as soon as I used the word law when I talked to them, I had so many people jump on me like, you're a lawyer? Oh, I need you. And I realized that the problem wasn't actually with me being a lawyer. It was with this idea of what lawyers are and realizing that people were coming up to me because I was more approachable. And most business owners do need legal advice. So but they just don't know who to talk to, who they can trust, and who can speak their language. And I realized, oh my goodness, this history of mine as a person who's had a family, kids, has like seen it all in the entrepreneur space, the ups and downs, and I feel it internally. I have the feelings that every business owner has. I realized like that is actually what's missing from the field of law. And
Yep.
so I dove right back in 2 feet, maybe head first, uh, and um, and just decided to create my own vision of what being a lawyer really is.
I love that. So when I think about like what brought you back from that week of feeling like you wanted to quit, it was kind of like connecting to the version or vision, I guess to use your word, of the lawyer that you wanted to be. Because I think it's easy when there's an industry word like lawyer or accountant or digital marketer to just assume the role of what you see other successful lawyers, accountants, marketers doing. But was it really like allowing yourself to say, I can build this any way I want. I can be myself. I can include my full story and my full self into my business. Was that ultimately what gave you enough permission to feel like you wanted to recommit?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly. When people started seeing me, connecting me and a lawyer, you could just see the look on their face was like relief. Like,
Hmm.
finally, a lawyer that doesn't make me feel belittled. I actually feel empowered.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you say to someone who's in their own quit week right now? Because I
Mm.
think a lot of business owners have this once a month, maybe once a quarter. What do they need to do or what should they consider doing at this moment if they're on a quit week?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that that panic that they're having is probably telling them something that something isn't working. Um, but it doesn't mean that quitting is necessarily the solution.
Yeah.
But revisiting, maybe taking everything you know about your business, putting it in a little box, putting it on a shelf,
Yeah.
and then redoing the values exercise.
Yeah.
And that's actually what I ended up doing, right? Is like, okay, let's just erase everything I know about being a lawyer, put it aside. Let's just start with what's important to me.
Cool.
And that exercise came out with something quite different than what I had thought I was going to do.
Hmm. To get a little bit granular on, like, let's say the quote unquote marketing. So you literally graduated from law school and then had to start building up a clientele base from scratch. Like nobody really knew. I didn't even know you were in law school until you kind of came out and said, like,
Mhm.
hey, I actually recently graduated. And I was like, huh? What were some of the things that you did to meet people, to find your first few clients, to establish yourself as a lawyer? Because I think, for anyone who's also making a career change, one of their biggest worries is, how will I find clients? Will I
Yeah.
be able to do this? So just if you could quickly cover off what worked for you, in order to kind of get yourself established in the industry.
Yeah, I'm finding more and more that it's that one-on-one, face-to-face, like human interaction. Like, how do I say it without
Yeah,
like
I know.
non-Zoom?
Uh,
Yeah, non-Zoom experience for me has been the single most effective way to get clients. Basically, to go out there and be like, "Hello, I'm a human and I'm a
yep.
lawyer," and they've just come knocking on my door.
Yeah.
Quite almost literally. Yeah. Yeah.
Incredible.
And it's so relieving, like thinking that you have to become a social media manager
Yep.
and practice law. It's so
Yeah.
nice not to do that. I go have parties and go to social events, and that's marketing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's so important in this day and age where AI is taking over and we don't know who's real from who's AI generated. I think the best thing we can do is show up in spaces and just, like you said, be a human and show our humanity. It's incredible how that can change the trajectory when you've been spending all your time online trying to build relationships. So
Yeah.
incredible. Okay, so let's kind of cover off. If anyone wants to know more about Zabo Law, they want to work with the business. What type of law do you specialize in? How do you do it differently? What can people hire you for? Give us the quick rundown here.
Yeah, well, I do Canadian business law. So anything a business needs, it could be their corporate structure or even sole proprietorships. I can help with that. Um, Trademarks, and then any contracts. And contracts can go from like small things like the things that go on your website to big partnership contracts, etc.
Yep.
I do all of that and trademarks as
Amazing.
well. Mhm.
And if people have just questions about where to even begin, what's the best way for them to get in touch, get started with you?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram. Ask me about contracts is my handle.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, I made a new one, so I don't even think you're on there, but I just thought it's easier and it's more fun to say, and I want to be a little fun. So
I love that.
yeah, ask me about contracts on Instagram. And then so my law firm is Zabo Law. It's not exactly what my last name. It's Zabo. My last name has an S at the beginning, but people always get.
Yeah, it's a tricky one to spell.
So I tried to make it easier, and now it's more complicated to explain. Yeah, but they're welcome to find me there or my website, Sonya, Sonya, Zabo, Szabo.com.
Amazing. We'll link all that in the show notes, and I would encourage everyone to reach out to you to, get their legal stuff sorted out in their business. And Yeah, thank you for being such an incredible community member inside of the Wave community and for always sharing your knowledge. And you're just such a wealth of wisdom when it comes to entrepreneurship. So appreciate you sharing your time today, and we wish you all of the best, Sonya.
Thanks, Kelsey.